thank you for coming to watch the Stories of Latter-day Faith channel. Today I feel very fortunate to have my friend Sophia coming to share her story of how she found the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we had originally set up to do this like many months ago, and then life happened and we didn't quite connect, but I'm very lucky that she decided she wanted to do this again. So without further ado, I will tell us a little bit about your background.
All right, so my name is Sophia, for those who don't already know. I was born in New York in 2002, so that would make me 21. I just turned 21 in June, and I already feel so old. Um, but so I was born in New York, and I grew up there until I was about like 3, and then we moved here. My mom, my dad, me, and my little brother, in 2007. So I've been in North Carolina for not sure how long, but since 2007, and I really love it here. I love the people. The weather is kind of on and off, but I still think it's super pretty, and I just love the community. Let's see. I'm currently not in school at the moment, but I am working full time, and I'm actually wanting to serve a mission, so that's why I'm working. I didn't really grow up religious. Both my parents grew up Catholic, so they kind of left the Catholic Church and decided like they're not going to raise their kids religious, and so we had our own choices of where we wanted to go in life, and so I've been to many other different churches, and I've explored other religions, and some have worked, some haven't, but here I am in the LDS Church, and I'm super happy, and I've accomplished so many things in my life, and I'm proud to be where I am today. And yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Mhm. So what did you know? So you said your parents were Catholic and you grew up
Yeah,
not really religious.
yeah.
Like, what did you know about the church, or what was your perception of the church like before you started investigating it?
So, as I said, I didn't grow up religious. My parents never like read scriptures to us. I never really knew. I knew of God and of Jesus. I didn't really know them, if that makes sense. And so I would do like reading scriptures all on my own. I would pray. I never really had that strong relationship. And so would like I would see like I would look up different churches. This happened around 2020 during COVID. I was like, okay, I haven't been to church in a long time. I want to start looking for other churches. And I've been to Baptist church, non-denominational, Catholic, just different ones just to see where I would be best at. And so I saw a come unto Christ ad and through Facebook, and I was like, oh, like LDS. I didn't know Latter-day Saints were like Mormons. Like I just thought it was like a separate thing. So I didn't know anything. I What I heard was Mormons, they didn't drink coffee. None had multiple wives. They were weird, they were creepy, they were super strict, like they couldn't drink caffeine. What else did I think? I just like very strict, very conservative. I was like, oh, like I would never want to be in that. Like I'm definitely not into that. So that's kind of like what I thought. But at the same time, I was like, oh, like I've never read the Book of Mormon. I've never been to church. I've never actually like took time to like actually see what it's like. So at the same time, I was like, okay, like I have these like opinions and views of how I see it, but at the same time, I'm gonna put that to the side because I really don't know anything about it. So I was like, okay, like let's give it a try. And obviously during 2020 COVID pandemic, missionaries didn't reach out to me until 2021. And that's when I guess the journey started.
Mhm. So when you started, was it in person or was it online?
So at first it was they t reached out to me over text, but I don't really I'm trying to remember because it was the beginning of 2021. I remember it was my senior year of high school, and I was searching for a church, and they're like, "Oh, we're missionaries for the LDS church, and we saw your request for an ad, like, how are you doing? Do you want to meet up? And I was like, no, not really. Like, I was at first like, I don't know. Like, it was such a new thing, so I kind of had anxiety about it, and so I just put it off to the side. Um, excuse me. But yeah, I wasn't really, I don't know. I've reached out, but then I was like, oh, they actually reached out to me. Now I have to respond, and that gave me anxiety. So I would like continue like ghosting them and like, oh, I'm busy, whatever, busy. And then one day they were like, hey, we are you free on this Saturday? And I was like, oh, I am. Why? And they're like, oh, we're baptizing someone. Would you like to come? And I was like, why not? I'll go. So I told my dad because he was gonna give me a ride. I was like, hey, can you drop me off at this church? I'm invited to a baptism. I made the lie that I was like, oh yeah, like my friend's getting baptized, just because like I didn't want them asking questions. And so he dropped me off at the church. And meanwhile, I saw the temple. Like we would drive by the temple all the time my whole life. And I for some reason I thought it was a Jewish temple. So I like that's what I thought, but I always saw this like big white building and I was like, "Oh, I wonder what that is." Like that's so pretty. And so he dropped me off and he was like, "Do you know this is a Mormon church?" And I was like, Mormon, this is a Latter-day Saint church. And he was like, yeah, it's the same thing. And I was like, oh, I was like, okay. And I remember I took this Snapchat video and I was like, hey guys, so I'm at this church for a baptism and I think they're Mormon and I think they're trying to convert me. And I'm definitely not into that. And I will definitely not become a Mormon. But just wanted to let you guys know. And here we are now. But yeah, that was my like first impression of the church. Like I was like, oh, it's all new, pretty. I saw the baptism and I was just crying my eyes out. I've never really cried at a baptism before, and I was crying at this one, so I was like, okay, like this is good. I must feel the spirit right now. I thought it was a little different. I mean, it's a lot different, but I was like, oh, like this is special. This is pretty. Like I actually feel spirit here. So I was like, okay, like I'll start meeting with the missionaries more. So I started meeting with missionaries more, and I didn't really, I don't know, they would ask me to read scriptures. I didn't read scriptures, but I would still meet with them just because I wanted to learn, but I didn't really take myself to like devote my time into it.
Mhm.
And I remember when we were talking about baptisms for the dead, and when they first told me that, I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. Baptisms for the dead, I don't think I'm into this. And so that's when I like really completely started ghosting them. Until I don't know, sister missionaries reached out to me in October because they were like, oh, like this person, they've like been investigating the church. Let's give it a try to reach out. Um, so that was a little bit about the beginning of when I, heard the church and then felt something in the spirit.
Okay. So you sort of answered this, but like, what were your first impressions when you started like regularly coming to church? So it sounds like after the sister missionaries reached out,
Yeah.
maybe that's when you started going more.
So that was
So
in
like,
October of 2021, and that's when I really started meeting with them. I kind of like ghosted them a bit, and then I was like, oh, like I'll continue to go more. So I started October, in November, December too, and then January, February, March, I was with sisters. And then I really actually like I would meet with these sisters, and I was like, these are like okay, everyone says Mormons are weird and like everything, but they're like the nicest people I've ever met. I was like, they're so nice, they're so sweet. I was like, why are people so hateful? And so I actually started reading the Book of Mormon, and I remember I was going to Florida in February, and I was still meeting with the missionaries, and they told me to read some scriptures. So I was like, okay. So I was on the flight, and I had I can't remember if I actually had a Book of Mormon or if it was on my phone. It might have been the library app, but so I started reading Alma 32 and Moroni 10. Such good scriptures. And I was like, why do I actually feel something? Like I feel good reading this. And I really loved Alma 32:21. It was like talking about faith, ye hope for things which are not seen but what you think true, like, um having faith. And like that was something I've always been strong about, as my faith is no matter what, I've always wanted to have a desire to have a relationship with Jesus. And I really was like, oh, this is really good. And so I had like a really good feeling about it. So that's when I really decided, okay, like since my first time when I saw the baptism, I remember the day that I felt like the spirit, and like I guess like my heart opened and my eyes opened, and that was like my first impression. So it was kind of good. There are some bad, like negative impressions, but I feel like with anything new, you like that's gonna happen, you know?
Yeah, I think part of the reason I ask this question of people is there is so much like outside perception that we're
Yeah.
weird or like, right, you kind of named it. And then you come in and you're like, well, these people are so nice. But then there's definitely church culture
Hmm.
that is
Yeah.
sort of different and maybe can be a little off-putting for people,
Yeah.
but I think over time you get used to it.
Yeah. And there's like I always tell people, I'm like, there's all different types of groups. There's gonna be good people and bad people, all those groups. And I get it, like there's bad people in like the church. And like my heart goes out to any of those who have been hurt by people in the church. But I also say, like, those bad people don't make up the whole church. Like those bad people are making us, like, the good ones look bad. And that just like hurts my heart, because like I just want everyone to like feel love and accepted and safe. And if that's not being happened, then like what more can we do as the good members of the church? And like how can we advocate for those who haven't felt safe or like heard in the church, and like what can we do to make that experience better? And that's why I'm always like so respectful and welcoming of new people. Like I bring the missionaries love this, but I always bring my friends to church. There's been some that didn't like it, which is fine, they have their own agency. And there's some that really did like it and kind of started me with missionaries, not a little bit, but I always love bringing people. And like on the church, how it says like all are welcome. And I love that about our church. No matter like what our background is, no matter who we are or if we're not members or not, everyone's so like the good people are so loving and accepting and sweet. And that's what I love about the church.
Um, so like what made you actually decide to go through with getting baptized? So I hear like you're talking about you're on the plane, you're reading the
Yeah.
scriptures, you had this like, oh, I really feel this, but like was that when you decided to be baptized or did it come a little later?
So it was a little bit later. I was reading like the Word of Wisdom, and like I would drink, I would smoke, I would vape. I would drink coffee and tea, and I was just like, I don't really want to cut any of that out. Like,
Well,
that was
yeah,
like,
you're down in the south, like sweet tea
you
is everywhere.
know, and I still occasionally struggle with sweet tea, but
I
other
do
than
too.
that,
Okay.
it's hard. It's really hard. Don't get me wrong, but I know eventually I'll be able to overcome that. But um, yeah, I at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about the Word of Wisdom. Because I was like, oh, I enjoy doing these things. Like, why would I want to stop them? So that's kind of like a little what was holding me back, but also like my parents, like they knew I was meeting with missionaries. Like they were allowing the missionaries to come in and talk to me, and I was like, like I want to do this on my own. Like, like I just want to see what it's like. I literally, this is what I told them. I was like, I'm not gonna join the church. Don't worry. I'm just like investing in. I just want to see what it's like. And they're like, okay, like you can meet with missionaries, just like don't join the church, because like all these bad things are like have happened in the church. I was like, okay, like I won't. And then so as I'm like feeling the spirit, I'm like, this is such like a huge sacrifice and a big commitment. Like do I really want to go through with this? And but at the same time in my head, I was like, you know how you feel in the church. Like you feel like everything that you've ever like prayed for or wanted, like in a gospel or a relationship with Christ, it's here. And like, when I heard about the plan of salvation, that's the one thing that really like the plan of salvation in the temple really made me want to join the church because my whole life, like, people tell me, oh, just because your parents are a member or just because your parents don't know Jesus, they're going to go to hell. Or, I was like, where do the good people go? Nobody could ever answer that. And I never really agreed with the heaven and hell thing. I just believe, like, you know, we don't really know 100% what is out there, but if we have hope for something, I think that's better. And I really, the three kingdoms of glory, like it's like mentioned in like I think the Old or New Testament. So I'm like I've always like believed in that. So that's what really got me hooked on. And I was like, okay, like I need to. The missionaries asked me because I got transferred to elders back to because I was meeting with sisters in another city, and so since the my Apex, it's called Apex State, that was close to me. They transferred me there. There was elders, and they were like, "How do you feel about being baptized?" And about like April, and I was like, I'm gonna need some time to think about it, just because this is a huge decision. They're like, no, of course, like we understand. And so I gave it a couple of weeks, and actually it was like a few months, but I asked my parents. So I asked my parents, didn't go that well. They were like, absolutely not. They were like, it's like a cold. I mean, that's what they heard. They didn't know. But they were like, no, like I understand they were protecting me. But at the same time, like I'm an adult. I want to be able to choose my path in life. And I was like, this is something that I want to do. Like it's been making me happy lately. Like, and I started to stop drinking. I started to like stop smoking, and I actually felt good about myself. Like all those times that I, did those things, I never felt whole, and I never felt really like fully myself. And so once I started like making changes and like repenting, I felt like I guess this conversion, this change of heart, and I was like telling my parents that, and they were like, okay, like do what you want at the end of the day. And so I think it was about, let's see, for a while they were like, no, you're not getting baptized, but then it was, I'm trying to think, maybe it was the first Sunday of June, and I went up and did a testimony. That was my like first ever testimony, and I just felt like, when you're sitting in the pew and the spirit's like, you're like, no, I'm not gonna go up. I don't want to go up. And then the spirit's like, you gotta go up. Go up. You're gonna go up. So I was like, okay, I'll go up. And I spoke my testimony. I just talked about Alma 32:21. And I was like, I'm not like a member or anything, but I really like this church and I like the gospel and I really am happy here and currently trying to get baptized and just waiting on that patiently. And I can't wait for the day that I'll be able to get baptized. And I just like cried after that. And I was like, I gotta hold it together. Like, my mascara, it's gonna run. And I did that testimony. And after that, I felt like this weight off my shoulder. And so many people came up to me. They were like, oh my goodness, like, that was so sweet. And so I went home and told my parents. And before I like prayed, I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask them another time, like, if I can do it. And then that's when they were like, okay, if it makes you happy, do it. At the end of the day, like do what you want. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is like prayer works. Like I prayed about this, and I feel like that testimony was so powerful that my parents' hearts opened for me to be able to do that. So I told the missionaries, and they they were so excited. They were like, yes, we're so excited. Like apparently I was like famous in the Raleigh mission. Like they would tell my testimony and my story to others and how I like, because like it's hard like teaching people and having them to stick with the missionaries and not flake out. And so I guess when they were like, oh, this girl has a desire to be baptized, like this is great. So I did that. And it took a bit for my parents to um like come to the baptism, but they eventually did, and it was wonderful.
Hmm. It's impressive that you got up and gave a testimony before you were baptized. I
Yeah.
don't know that I could have done that.
It was so scary. I literally inside, like at the outside, I probably looked fine, but in the inside, I was like shaking and like I literally felt so sick because I have a fear of public speaking. But that's
Oh,
what I
wow.
love about, yes, so I had a fear. I was like, I am not going up. I was like telling the Holy Ghost, I am not going up. You do not need to make me go up because you know I have anxiety. But then I was like, okay, fine, I'll go up. And then ever since then, I've been able to go up and give testimonies, and I gave a talk in my the YSA that I was baptized into, and I have overcome public speaking. So that's like a huge thing that that's been able to the gospel is able to help me. Yeah.
Awesome. So you kind of mentioned that you had gone to different churches, you've sort of looked into different things. So I always ask this question, why the Latter-day Saint Church and not a different church?
Hmm. So in other churches, I think I've said before, like I didn't really feel the spirit in any other churches, and I was kind of mistreated um, in those churches, and so I was like, okay, like this won't work. Like I don't know, I didn't have a strong relationship with Christ there, and I just felt like, you know, to have a relationship with Christ, there's more here in the church than in other churches. Like, the temple is like the big thing. Like I've noticed, like, I think like in the Christian denomination, we're the only ones who really continue to do like temple work, and it's literally talked about in the Bible. And I really like I genuinely love the temple. And so that was a big thing when I started learning about temple. I was like, wow, this is so great. This is like absolutely beautiful. And it was the plan of salvation too. Um, Other things. I love the Book of Mormon and like, yeah, what is that?
That's the big one, the Book of Mormon. It's like no other church uses this book. Not really.
No. And
So
I do genuinely believe it's another testament to Christ. And I know people are like, oh, just like, why not just the Bible? And I'm like, why not more? You know? And I really do. I like if anyone that takes the time to read the Book of Mormon, it talks about God so many times. It talks about faith, it talks about strength, Jesus Christ, like everything. And it's just different people and their I guess their interpretation or experience of Christ, just like the Bible. And so that's why I really do think it's true, and I really do love it. And it's gotten me through like, it's crazy to say like a book is has gotten me through it, but I think we all like in the church, like the Book of Mormon is like the scriptures are a guide to life. And so I really do like I wish everyone could take that chance, even if you don't agree, just read the Book of Mormon and just know for yourself and find out.
so what's different about your life now that you did get baptized?
But like I mentioned before, I don't drink anymore. I don't smoke. I don't vape. I don't. I keep the law of chastity. I just like. I feel more alive. Like I feel like like I never before I joined the church, I would never go up and public speak, and I've been able to overcome that through the church and the gospel. And so I it's my life has drastically changed. Like I actually, you know, but I'm starting to like really understand like from right or wrong and like, choose the right and realize that yeah, in the moment, those bad decisions I make, they might feel good in the moment, but after you're gonna feel regret and shame. And so why not just choose the right thing? And that's what something I've been able to help. And I've been able to, be more kinder and loving and understanding of people. And I just feel like a lot of people say I have this like bright, radiant light and joy of Jesus. And that's something that's definitely changed. And I used to, struggle with like body image and like my appearance, and I dress more modest now. And that's just my decision. I really like it, and that's personal to me. And that's definitely changed my like, I don't know, just I feel like everything has changed.
I mean, what I'm wearing right now isn't the most modest, but it's because it's like 100 degrees
I
outside.
don't know.
But
I don't
I just want to mirror that too, that like the modesty is a choice. And
know.
it and like I think a lot of people look at that and say it's like "Ooh, the church is oppressing women," and I don't see it that way. I think it's just like trying to embody that like I'm so much more than like physical attractiveness. Like
Exactly. I want someone to look at me and not look at what I'm wearing or like to like judge me on that and judge me on my personality or my respect, and like, our body is a temple. And I love modest clothing. I'm not endowed yet, but I'm pretty modest, and I just love modesty. And I'd rather do that than, you know, show off my cleavage or anything else. And I really felt like I was doing that before for like a validation from people. And I was like, oh, like if I look like this, people will like me more. And I'm just like, no, like if someone doesn't, someone, if, you know, if someone at the end of the day doesn't like me, that doesn't matter. I'm a good person. I like the way that I dress. And if you don't like it, not my problem.
yeah, I think we could talk a lot about that, but we won't. 'Cause I think there's a lot there of just sort of how empty that like physical validation can be
Yeah,
and like how it just it leaves you feeling less than before. At
yeah.
least for me it did. Um, so was there anything that was like difficult to adjust to once you started going to church after you were baptized?
I guess just I've always like really cared about what people think. And so I was scared, like, once I joined the church, like I would lose friends or like family members, or like what would people think of me? And that's what I was really scared to like adjust to. Like I had to realize like, everyone has their own path in life. I It shouldn't matter what I do because it doesn't concern anyone else. So that was kind of hard to adjust to. And then like I said, like I struggled on and off with like the word of wisdom, but that was a little hard to adjust to as well. But I'm doing great now. So I'm definitely it's new things take time, and you're gonna adjust, you're gonna fall back, you're gonna get back up, but I'm in a good place.
Well, I remember, so how old are you again?
I just turned 21 in June.
Anyway, yeah, so I got baptized when I was 19. So roughly around the same age that you
Yeah,
were, I think. And I remember struggling a lot with the word of wisdom because I think, especially at that age, people are so excited about using substances that there's a lot of like expectation around that.
yeah,
And I know that I personally struggled with that for a long time when I was in college. So I just want to validate that
yeah,
it is a struggle. And
no, yeah,
once you're older, it gets so much easier because people
no,
don't
yeah.
care who don't drink or drink. So
Yeah, and this generation, like most, like it's like common for people to like underage drink and do all these things, but in reality, like, do these things at the end of the day make us happy? And I don't think they do. I just think, these substances, we're using them. I mean, not me, but like people are using them to feel something or to cope or like to do it socially, and like you can party without being under the influence, and I have felt so much better like stopping all those things. And I just, like you said, like there's like expectation or like, it's like normal, but I don't want to be like everyone else. I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to do I want to do and what's between me and Heavenly Father, and hold on to my covenants, and those promises that I made.
And I don't know what your experience is with the YSA ward, but I remember like we did so many things. There were so many activities that were planned and so many like things that were done with people from church that it was almost like I don't even have time to go and party with these other people because like there's so much to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's your experience or not.
Yeah, so I actually am not in YSA anymore. So I got baptized in June and then I left the YSA in about December or November. I had a really bad experience in the YSA. Um, they were very judgy. There was this one person considered my best friend, and he's got his own problems. I hope he's doing well, but he was awful to me, and he made it seem like everyone in my ward didn't like me or hated me or didn't want me there. And so like he really put that into my mind. And so I just felt like so uncomfortable being there. And so I had my records transferred over to a family ward, which I've been in since then, and I love it. But I know that like the YSA is so good for those like to meet friends, and I sometimes go to my boyfriend's YSA, and I have friends from like the other YSA because so our zones got like moved. So we had the Apex YSA that got split in half. That's no longer a thing anymore. Half those people went to my boyfriend's ward, which is like 30 minutes away. And the other half went to like Raleigh, that's like 35, 40 minutes away. So that's not a thing anymore. But I'm glad I moved when I did because I'd rather go to the family ward, which is 8 minutes from my house, than to 30, 40 minutes away. But I really like the family ward over the YSA. But I can it's valid for anyone else who really likes the YSA to meet people your age. Yeah.
I'm sorry you had a bad experience. I think that speaks to what you said earlier of some people in church are great and some people aren't. And which is why it's so important for all of us to be good
Yeah.
because you never know. Um, so last question. If someone was investigating the church and they saw this video, what would you want them to know about the church and the impact it's had on your life?
I absolutely love the church and I love the gospel, and it's truly changed me into a completely better person. And at first, it's gonna seem a little new, and but that's okay. Like, knowledge is key and power. And if we, put that faith down and, you know, pray about it, trust in the Lord, and just give it a try, like, at least you tried. And if you don't like it, perfectly fine. And if we do, that's great. And I definitely recommend reading the Book of Mormon and coming to a church service. Or if you're not a member, we have, whenever they create like a new temple or it's dedicated, like it's open to the public. So definitely go to a public open house for a temple. And you will be in awe because I love the temple and it's so beautiful. So I definitely recommend all those things and just give it a try. It won't hurt to try.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Um, thank you for, it sounds like you've talked about your story with a couple different places, or in a couple different interviews. And I think that's great. I hope you keep telling your story because for me, conversion stories are really powerful because not to say like people who grew up in the church aren't, that they're not as good or something, but
Yeah.
just like I think there's a lot of power in someone coming from a very different place and finding it and finding that joy. And I hope you keep telling it. And I hope you keep going. And don't let
Nice.
people be mean to you. I will fight
Mhm.
them for you.
Thanks.
Well, any final thoughts? before we wrap up?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Of course.